Well, in other news, our unemployment rate dropping by 0.2 percentage points, 0.2% in the fourth quarter of last year, between the end of September and the end of last year. This has been driven by the finance sectors, private households and trade. The new figures show this tiny improvement, with some parts of the economy recovering to pre-COVID levels. And Ntokozo Khumalo spoke to the Statistician General Maluleke.
One of the things that we are seeing is that our economy coming out of COVID-19 is showing a recovery. So we're seeing a post-COVID-19 recovery, in that in the second quarter of 2020, our real economy was sitting at less than $1 trillion, about 920 billion. But now in the third quarter of 2022, we're sitting at 1.161 trillion. So we are seeing a recovery, and that recovery is actually surpassing even pre-COVID times, but that is from the side of the economy. And we can only say from those that are commentators that an economy that is recovering will start to generate jobs.
Now, despite obviously the huge crisis within unemployment is youth unemployment, and we did see a dent in that drop in the number there. What are some of the insights we can take out of that? Because, you know, analysts and experts who deal with youth unemployment, their concern being young people, especially graduates, might be getting those jobs, but they're often seasonal contract work that are internships that are not long-term employments. Are there any insights that we can get from that drop in youth unemployment from Q3 to Q4?
Firstly, according to the International Labour Organization, we are advised that as long as people can work, whether it's short term, if they can work for an hour a day, they are actually working. But now specifically to youth unemployment is that young people, especially those in ages 15 to 24, remain vulnerable to labour markets. Their unemployment rate is sitting at 61%. So are women. Their unemployment rate is generally higher than that of males. But particularly black African women, their unemployment rate is sitting at about 39.6%, which is far higher than the national unemployment rate of 32.7%.
Well, those figures released today again showing how difficult it is for young people and how they're bearing the brunt of our unemployment crisis. In the last 3 months of last year, 4 out of 10 young people, so between the ages of 25 and 34, were not employed. To put it perhaps more easily, nearly half of the people in that age group are not working. Kristal Duncan Williams is the project lead at Youth Capital. Kristal, good afternoon to you. How difficult is it for a young person to find a job right now?
Extremely difficult, Stephen. I think we can talk about semantics of 0.% here and one way up and one way down, but the reality is that it hasn't changed for young people. If you look at the trend over the last 10 years, we have seen a continued upward trajectory of the number of young people not in employment, education or training. And we're busy working on some analysis now, and we know that, you know, up until the third quarter of last year, the jobs that had been created in the 8 years prior were actually all going to older working age population, so those older than 35. And you know, these are the interesting numbers that we're starting to see from our analysis. And I think it's important to think about, when we're speaking about employment going up, that actually young people are at the back of the queue, and young black women are right at the back of the queue. And so what are we doing for those groups to really turn things around for them?
Why is it harder for young people than older people? Is it the old experience argument? Is there a difference in the education that different generations received? I mean, I realize it's a very contentious question.
Yeah, we were actually just speaking about this today at Youth Capital, and we think that, you know, there are two things. What are the types of jobs that are being created? You know, there's this idea about industrialization, and young people, you know, they don't maybe want to do those kinds of jobs. I think there's globally, this isn't a South African thing. The jobs that are of interest to young people are different, number one. Number two, we know that there's a big gap in mid-level management. So I think my sense is that the experience, you know, argument, which comes up so many times, young people just don't leave school, even university, with basic workplace skills. And employers are often not in a place or not equipped to bridge that gap sufficiently. And so when they hire young people, they have a bad experience and they'd rather just go with an older hire who they maybe need to onboard less, provide less training and mentorship for. But, this is just kind of a cycle that then repeats itself. The more young people without the experience, nobody wants to give them the chance. They never get the experience. And then, we're just never going to train up the next cohort of young people. And we really need to think about this as an investment in the future of this country. More than half of the working age population are youth. And if we don't get them into some form of earning pathway, we're setting ourselves up for disaster as a country.
Could it also just be that older people have jobs already or they have connections? So experience is part of it. But they basically are doing what they've always done and they move sort of slowly upwards maybe in a certain area. But they don't lose their job is the key point. What I'm trying to get to is the real question is that no new jobs are being created for young people. In the past, jobs for young people were being created all the time.
Exactly. And I think that's, goes to the broader macroeconomic issues, and our kind of response to the budget is that I think the Treasury's current approach is not creating an environment where the economy is growing in a way that really leads to job creation for young people. We need millions more new jobs than we are creating, as you say. And then even the jobs that do exist, young people lack those social connections. They lack the networks to find out where to apply, how to show up, even if you get the job. And so all of these things act as barriers to young people. And the comment was just made before was on about, short-term work opportunities. We know that the presidential employment stimulus is creating these short-term opportunities and they provide some work experience. But it's difficult for young people to keep their foothold once they get that first experience in the current economic situation where there just aren't jobs. And I think that's something we need to think about, investment in infrastructure as a country that allows young people to be more connected to opportunity and allows for an environment where, even if they want to hustle or create some kind of self-employment opportunities, that the environment is conducive for them to be able to do that.
Kristal, I hate to be so cynical about this, but I bet the young people who are getting jobs are the young people whose parents have the connections to get them that internship.
Absolutely. And, we see that all the time. Young people say it's about who you know, and I don't know anyone. And everybody in my street is not employed. So where must I get the jobs from? And I think even, all of us who are working can think about how we found out about so many of the work opportunities or study opportunities or bursary opportunities through somebody we knew. And the reality is for many young people in this country is that they know no one who can help them find those opportunities. The school you go to, the friends you have, all of this really feeds into your ability to even have opportunities visible to you, let alone being equipped with the skills to apply for the job.
Kristal, Duncan Williams, thank you, project lead at Youth Capital, very sobering. All right, voting now starting in Tshwane. That's for a new mayor there, and Mbali Tatani.